Right, last game on Friday night was at Mineral Resources Park, and that was the pre-season derby, which we are getting a bit accustomed to now, seeing these happening. And we had our man over in the west, Nathan Schmook there. Schmooky, welcome, mate.
G'day, Warnie.
All right, let's have a look at all the things that happened there, and probably the headline was the carnage for the Eagles. How many Black Cats has Adam Simpson run over in the last few months?
Oh, it's been a cursed pre-season for Adam Simpson and the Eagles, and it's all come down to bad luck for them, and that was the story on Friday night. It was hard to keep an eye on the footy in the first half because we had the binoculars on the West Coast bench, just watching the trainers working overtime, getting ice applied to ankles, and yeah, it was a bad night for them with Campbell Chesser, one guy that we were very interested in from a fantasy perspective. Elliot Yeo as well. I've spoken to you before that I was very keen on him, and he had that ice applied quite high on his ankle. So, yeah, worried about those two guys in particular.
Yeah, well, that's the thing for Chesser. I think even if it's quite a minor injury, it's probably going to put his very much in doubt for round one anyway, just being a new kid on the block.
I think so. Yeah, I'd almost put a line through him now from a round one perspective. And Elliot Yeo, yeah, like I said, I'm worried about that one, but we'll get further details from the Eagles, hopefully, early this week about the extent of those injuries.
I guess Yeo was looking pretty good as well, being the main man in the midfield.
Oh, he's a star when he's fully fit, Elliot Yeo, and he's the key to their midfield when he's up and running. So I was expecting a big year from him, and look, it could still happen, Warnie. He could have a minor injury here and still have a big year, but I think there's warning signs there.
All right, well, who were the positives then for the Eagles that we can look at?
Oh, it was thin on the ground, but the one that I identified as benefiting from all of this was Tim Kelly. Mm-hmm. And we know that he can star when the other midfielders around him aren't there. We've seen it multiple times last year, and I thought he stepped up. He won plenty of the ball. He was the key to their midfield, a midfield that was well beaten, mind you. But, yeah, he got his fair share of the footy. He looked really good. He's looked really good all pre-season, to be honest with you, in the training that I've been down there watching. So, from a fantasy perspective, from a footy perspective, Tim Kelly was probably the only positive apart from a young SSP prospect, Hugh Dixon, as well in the forward line.
Yeah, now just one quick one was West. How did he look? Because a few people have been talking about him a little bit on social last night. Do you think he would be a player that gets a little bit more opportunity now? Obviously played some games last year. He's got the forward status in fantasy. That's probably what's got people excited.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. And I think he's probably on that next rung of midfielders who could come in and start having an impact. And with Greg Clark out with an AC joint as well. I mean, I saw them as being very similar players, and I probably had Greg Clark slightly ahead of Connor West, but they have been very pleased with West pre-season. So, yeah, I think if he can string some, have a nice Amy Community Series game next week as well, then there probably is a midfield spot there for him, actually, when you really think about who's missing and who can come in.
All right, well, West Coast probably don't read too much into it, and like we spoke to Harry Edwards last week, probably they may not have too many players that worry us too much in fantasy this year. It was quite funny that he was basically saying none of them are fantasy relevant. He must have looked to head into this game a little bit as well, seeing that. So let's go to Freo, and their midfield is something that we'll be monitoring a lot next week when they're playing, and leading into round one, you've got Brayshaw and Sarong there, who were obviously getting the bulk midfield time, but who else was looking good in there?
Yeah, well, if we touch on Brayshaw, I thought he was best on ground, and I'm really excited about the season that he could have now. He looks bigger, he looks fitter. I know that he's had a really strong pre-season, talking to a few people at the footy club, and they're excited that he can go to another level now. Sarong just ticked his legs over, I thought, got the job done, was impressive in patches. But the big storyline for Fremantle, I thought, was Will Brodie. He was excellent playing as an inside midfielder, attended almost all of their centre bounces, had a really good impact, sort of winning the hard ball and feeding it out. So I think it was just a sign that he could have a clear role there at Fremantle. And again, they were really happy with his pre-season up until a bit of soreness in recent weeks where he was backed off. But yeah, speaking to Justin Longmuir after the game, he said, look, I wasn't surprised by it. I didn't learn anything from that performance from him because he's done it all pre-season. So
yeah.
I think when you look at the names in that midfield, he's a guy who probably has a role there.
That's all looking really positive. I think JL was, everything I read there, he sounded like he was super positive about him. He's 387 in Fantasy Classic and has that forward status. But yeah, it looks like a wing inside. He sort of can do it all, can't he?
He can, yeah. I do like him. I liked him when Freo got him on board from Gold Coast as a player with upside. And I think the fresh start is going to do wonders for him. So he was a positive in the midfield. Mitch Crowden got a lot of time in there. They've been happy with his pre-season, but I think some of the other storylines were around the ground for Freo.
Yeah, so what else can we get out of that game for the Dockers?
Well, Liam Henry, if you're keen on Liam Henry, I'm not sure how much he's going to be a big disposal winner, probably not as much as some of those other midfielders, but playing on a wing really suits him. I thought they played through him quite a lot, tried to get him into space and kicking inside 50. He's a really nice, a beautiful kick actually, and I think the forwards are going to enjoy leading up to him. So they'll try to get the ball in his hands as much as possible. That role suits him, and the mail I've got out of Fremantle is that spot for him for round one is one that he's going to hold. So, pending everything going well in the next pre-season game, I think we can look forward to Liam Henry on a wing. Jordan Clark at half-back was terrific. The speed that he showed was, one of the other big stories out of Fremantle. The speed all over the ground that they had, but Jordan Clark kick-started that out of the back line. I know he's had these big pre-season games before and probably fooled some fantasy coaches, but I think it's real at Freo. I think he's going to have a good role there at the Dockers.
And he'll have that sort of spot, I guess. That's the thing. And he's the perfect one because he's only got the midfield status, but he will definitely be playing halfback and do enough to gain the defender status at round 6, so could make a good draft late round bolter.
Exactly. I always thought the wing was what was going to suit him at the Dockers, but Justin Longmuir's been really keen to just settle him as a halfback, play him in that role that he's most comfortable in, the role that he's played the most footy in. So I think we can lock that in as a halfback role. Michael Frederick is probably not as relevant, but 5 goals playing forward. He was terrific. He was one of the best players on the ground. And Nathan O'Driscoll, a guy
I want to know about him. 190k defender mid.
Yeah, and someone that probably got excited about based on some intra-club stuff that he's done, and he's been really impressive there. He played on a wing on Friday night, and I'm starting to cool a little bit on Nathan O'Driscoll, not so much from his performances, but more so just talking to a few people about the midfield players that Fremantle are going to have and where he sits in that pecking order. And I think it's going to be wing for him if he can squeeze into that team. And Darcy Tucker is probably the one who would take that spot off him when he returns from a hamstring injury. So, I'm less excited about Nathan Driscoll being there in round 1, but I do think that if there are injuries at Fremantle, then he's a guy who's going to be ready to come into the team.
I guess there's a few bodies to come back in over the next couple of weeks for Freo that will mix things up. We'll get Fife and who else? Mundy. What was his injury? Is he going to be all right for round 1, do you think?
Oh, there were no concerns from a Fremantle perspective. He was rested, right. They said, on Friday night. So, 36-year-old, he's had a reasonable pre-season. David Mundy coming back from I think that was an ankle injury that he had just before Christmas. So, he's just eased into it. They had a quiet week on the track, and they just didn't want to take any risks with him. He's got the runs on the board, David Mundy. He knows what he has to do to get ready for round 1.
Beauty. Thanks, Schmooky, and good work over there in the West. You'll get another derby to look at this week.
Pleasure, Warnie. Yeah, we do. So, back-to-back derbies before round 1, and there was plenty of heat in Friday night's game, so I expect there will be again, but let's just hope the Eagles can avoid any more injuries to players who might be relevant for fantasy coaches, even if Harry Edwards says there isn't many.
Thanks, mate.
Good on you, Warnie. Cheers.